Tovit Neiser, if you haven't met me yesterday, I'm a business storyteller, and with me, please join Jimmy Tritovsky,
Yes.
former VP People Operations and Talent Acquisition at The Score, and Paul Bucheri, fellow analyst of Talent Analytics and Insights at Boston Scientific. Thank you for joining us. We're going to discuss building your best multifunctional team in HR and PA. So maybe you start a bit about your career and how it relates to building these awesome teams.
Yeah, sure. So first off, Jeff did a great job talking about various elephants in the room, but he missed one. Congratulations, Canada, for winning the Four Nations face-off. I get a little heartburn when I say that, but congratulations. So my personal journey into people analytics really started in the semiconductor industry. I'd been working as a product engineer, and we were running in instances where we had problems in the field. We had a lot of downtime in our equipment, so what I was doing was dialing into our equipment and figuring out where we had problems, and I started to map that over to various field service engineers, and what I was finding was they weren't getting the training that they needed. And so that started an initiation around talent management, training, development, and we started a rotation of bringing people back into the company to get the training that they needed on the equipment. And so we used the analytics from the equipment to identify where the problems were. We got them into training, and from there on out, the equipment went up, and the vendors, the companies were doing great, uptime was doing great, and then the clock went off in my head and said, we can do much more with people analytics. And so that evolved from semiconductor into financial services, and then ultimately I'm with Boston Scientific and medical device and scaling up a people analytics organization.
Okay, thank you. We're going to dive and dissect how do you actually build these teams, but Jimmy, on to you.
So my journey is a little bit different. I grew up in a city called Windsor. It's across from Detroit. I was going to go into automotive engineering, but everybody knows that what happened in 2007, 2008, financial crisis. So I said, I don't know if there's going to be jobs for me moving into automotive engineering, especially in Detroit as a Canadian. So I switched majors and went into business and computer science. I still wanted to do something technical, but I realized I liked the people side of things, and I like the idea of building businesses from a people perspective, because a lot of the companies I admired growing up, like Google, Nintendo, some of those ones, a lot of their success was driven from their culture and the employees. So I said, okay, I'd like to get into that a little bit more. And just having the technical brain, I noticed a lot of gaps in HR, particularly. I said, I can quantify a lot of these things, really. I said, to communicate a better message and a better story. To executives and to what we're trying to build here. So I said, I'm going to start getting into that. So I worked in a lot of consulting, worked for a lot of top startups in Canada, did some work in New York, Chicago. So I'm a little bit all over the place in terms of consulting. I did work for one of Canada's largest unicorns, The Score, that sold for $2.1 billion in 2021 to Penn Entertainment. And then after we got acquired and start to turn a little bit more into a casino business, I said, I want to take a step back, do something else. So I actually left, spent some time with my family and kids, and now I'm getting back into it. But that's my story.
We have you here today. Jimmy, maybe you start. What are the skills of that imaginative, best multifunctional team? What do you think should be there?
Yeah, so I was building a lot of these teams out early before, I guess, people analytics became labeled people analytics. So I generally had what we call the career journey. So it's like a competency matrix, and it basically scores employees' skill set, if we're going back to quantifying it, over their journey into their career, so at different levels. And I found that a few of the things that are important when you're building out these teams, they do need to have some sort of HR and talent acumen. I believe it's good to understand the subject that you're providing numbers for, data, reports, so on and so forth, and how you're going to impact it. But also the technical side, analytics, me coming from a technical background, it's a lot easier. You don't need to be an engineer or a computer scientist to be in people analytics. I'll be very clear with that, and you'll see it in my talk later. But I feel like you'll have an easier time if you're going to do a lot of, the nitty-gritty work, right? The actual analysis, diving deep into the numbers, so on and so forth. But you'll also need procedural development, process knowledge. All those things kind of combined are core competencies, if we just talk about competencies themselves. But there's a lot of intangibles too that you look for when building these types of teams, and it's all dependent on what the business needs are, right? Because a lot of how you're going to structure that team or who you're going to hire next is going to be dependent on what the business wants. So for example, if I give you an example of a client that had very poor reporting, right? Who am I going to hire first for that people analytics team as we start to build that out? Someone who's great at data visualization and reporting, et cetera. So those are just from like 1,000-foot level view, how I kind of look at building some of those teams.
Paul, what are the pitfalls that you would advise people here to avoid when they build these teams?
Well, that's a really good question. Avoid or look for?
You choose. You can go.
Let's go with look for.
Okay.
I'm an opportunist, right? So when you're starting from scratch, you really need to think about some base technical competencies. Now, my team, we're all relatively proficient in coding. We're all relatively proficient in statistics. So you have to look for that base competency. But then you think about the ecosystem that plays out within HR and people analytics, people insights. It's how we support the organization is where it really comes in. And so we look at it from the life cycle of an employee, right? So we talked about, I think Jeff was talking about it earlier, you're hiring and you're recruiting, right? So you have that, that piece of context. You have that piece of language that plays out between TA. You have the piece that plays out within performance management. So you have to have skills aligned to those given areas. Mm-hmm. So for me, for example, I come from a little bit on the talent management side of life. I have an instructional design graduate degree, and so I square off with our talent management folks. So I'm looking for people that have those learning skills. I'm looking for people that have those analytic skills, and I'm looking for people that have those computer-related skills, so they can translate data to information to be able to take action on them.
Any example or story from your career of a team that you built and there was a mismatch, something that didn't really work as planned?
Yes.
Only one.
I'll go first. I'll go first there. I'm not going to name any companies or names. There's a lot of companies I work for. But a big problem with people analytics practitioners is analysis paralysis. They want to give you 20 pages worth of numbers and data and just bombard you with all this code and whatever else it needs to be. And some of the examples earlier, a lot of executives, they don't want to hear that. They don't really care. All right, they want to get to the point. Show me a slide, off you go. And I've had an individual in the past who we definitely needed, but they kind of fell into that silo, into that trap. They really like being a developer, even though they weren't a developer by trade. Get really nitty-gritty into the analysis, right? And there's a bit of a mismatch there because we actually needed someone who was a better communicator, right? And who could visualize the data. And that's where, we started to hire or, also develop. So you needed to do both things. That person's skill set and being able to visualize and actually present, and then hiring someone to kind of supplement that side of it. So, we can deliver an overall better product and better communication to the board members. But we definitely I've had that mismatch before, and I've had it the other way around, where someone's just a great communicator and they just, I can't touch any of that code, I can't touch any of those dashboards, I don't really know about that.
Yeah, people are aligned just specific to the technical side of things. It's very problematic to share the story. You can't convey what a standard deviation really is and what its effect is on the business. So having somebody that can translate that data to information, to insights, to action is an amazing pull-through. And we were kind of going through our prep call, and a term that kept coming up, especially in the people analytics space, is the unicorn. It's a rare person, but it's something that has to be developed as we progress this particular areas. How do we get those very technically competent people to translate the data into insights so that the organization can take action on them and make them more efficient?
So a unicorn is someone who has everything?
Yes, it's an elusive creature that we can't quite catch.
Right.
It's very tough to catch, so most of the time you have to develop that unicorn.
Okay.
They do exist, but agreed.
Let's talk about some hiring tips. Do you hire someone who's more on the technical and then train him, or vice versa?
Another great question. And it all comes down to where you are in the phase of maturity. In the early stages, you're probably going to be looking at more technical people that are adept and competent in data management, maybe some querying languages, pulling data together to generate reports.
Okay.
And then you get that competency built. But then as you start to progress, data is just data. And so how do you translate that data to information? That's where the skills need to evolve. So we're starting to progress more away from just the reporting. We don't do reporting, we provide insights, and that's the name of our organization. And that allows us to start to focus on how do we really pull the levers to drive change in the given businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point.
Specifically, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with everything that was mentioned there. It definitely depends on the stage of the organization, pre-seed, Series C, B, enterprise. You have to match what's going on in the business aligned to that. One thing that I've used in the past to establish people analytics practices, it's called the maturity model. So if anybody here is familiar with like AWS, they have a maturity model for their product and how they implement it in organizations. I have one for people analytics. How do you implement that into organizations that might need something? What I've found is, there's 5 stages. Like you have nothing, and then you're Google in terms of like your optimization. So it's like, how do you get there? So if you're starting off like brand new, you need just that fundamental understanding of basic analytics and establishing a business need to the executives that, hey, this is an important thing. We need to have someone or develop some skill sets to get it established so we can at least communicate basic dashboards, quantify some of our people, processors or metrics and so on and so forth to get that kind of going. So that's all I was going to add.
Let's zoom out on the building of this multifunctional team. How would the PA role help the organization in building other teams, not just HR or PA?
That's a great question. I'll take it. Our first one.
You and me.
Sure.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Flip a coin.
It's a great question, and it's been foundational for the way that I've built teams. So if I use an example, most recently, so when we were originally acquired from the Score, we were acquired when we were at 350 people. And in 3 years, myself and the team had to build that organization to 1,800 people. So we had to hire 1,300 in a very small period of time, right? So it ended up being about 3.2 hires per day is what we calculated. And this is in engineering positions, this is in security, content, risk and trading, all over the place, US, Canada, Gibraltar, like in Europe. And the way that you develop the skill sets of what is needed for the business to execute has to come from people analytics. We're the people who have the data. We're the people who have the performance management. We're the people who are building out the competencies. We're obviously working with all these different partners, but we're the ones who are aligning with the business. Okay, so we need to develop a product or do this technology migration. What's that actually going to require? If you go to different stakeholders, they're just going to, okay, here's your budget. Let me just hire all these people that I need. No, don't do that. Let's dial it back. Work with your people analytics and just general HR function to determine, okay, what are the core competencies that's going to get us to this technology migration? Okay, we need infrastructure engineers. We need back-end API engineers. We need designers, so on and so forth. Okay, great. At what level, right? Do we want them intermediate? Do we want them juniors, senior, principal? And this really helps the business from a people analytics lens, develop that talent, and more so understand the workforce that they need going forward to build out the product and execute their mission.
In your specific accelerated growth, 3.5 you said per day.
Yeah,
Let's say they're moving into new areas and you don't have data to back that. Let's say now you have 600 new people, maybe engineers, but something like skill sets that it's a new space, that the people analytics can base it on data that you've accumulated.
Yeah.
So what would you do? How would you build that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So when we were expanding, so when we dumped the Barstool and went to ESPN Bet as a product, one major factor and like a success metric was having particular amount of customer service. So I'm going to take it away from engineering, move it to CS people, and we needed to hire them within a specific region, which was New Jersey, because it's just like a lot of compliance and state laws there. Complexities, and we needed to hire 200 in a month. So, and it came out of nowhere, right? And it's like, hey, here's 200, hire them. Now, it's very different than how we manage customer service and customer success in Canada, right? With the Score product, which was a little bit more like babying customers, and they were a little bit more to media products and so on and so forth. We did have a bet platform, but now all of a sudden we're dealing with different types of customers. We're betting on a platform that is new, right? And it requires a different level of skills, right? And you have to be able to deal with people who can be pretty brash on the phone and sometimes rude. How do you deal with those types of customers? People who have, who've maybe gone into some sort of issues, like personally, and won't get into it, but like there's like gambling addiction, right? How do you moderate that? How do you have those conversations? Right? How do you support the technical side of the product too? So it's a mixed bag all of a sudden. So we have to pull from the labor market that is there, right? And understand, okay, what's in this region? It's a new region for us. I mean, we did have a presence. It's a new region. It's going to be a bit different skill set from the Canadian side. What are the core competencies that these people are going to need in a very high turnover type of position, right? Which can be high stress, sometimes low paying. So what do we do as an organization to actually move that forward? And the data that we have with the labor market, competencies that we've developed over the time, kind of gives us that formula and the recipe for who we need to hire.
Yeah, we follow a pretty similar model when it comes to that, especially as we start to stage up new technologies in medical device. Some of the techniques, some of the research that's out there suggests that we don't have the competencies in-house. We have the skills, we have a skill matrix, we have competency matrix, but we just don't have the talent for a new position that we're looking to build up. So we go out to the market, we do the research and say, here are some areas, here are some like skills that we may be able to bring in a lower level and grow them into what we need. But we're utilizing that people analytics piece to get them in there. It's just all about discovery and figuring out where we need to go.
Yeah, if I was just to add one thing, if you could just do one thing in one of those scenarios, have your, build out your persona for that role. Right? What is that? Now you're going to have all the data. We're not going to nerd out about that right now, but just like have the persona of this is what this person looks like, this is their skill set, and they will have a success rate of X, right? Predictive, like through a predictive model. That if you are finding that individual, 89% of the time, they will be a successful hire.
Right.
Okay. We talked about the PA role in this hiring process of building that utopian team. What about that elephant in the room that Jeff Higgins just referred to, AI? Will it replace people? Will it replace people who don't know how to use it? And
yeah, so we've been spending a lot of time over the past year or so really starting to take a look at AI, Gen AI, and what its effect's going to be on the workforce. Taking a look at skills that may not be as necessary as they once were, and then skills that are going to be in demand in the future. Okay. And we do that based on utilizing the skills matrix, competency models, future roles that we believe that we're going to need, and then taking a look and breaking those skills down to see where, all right, this may not be something that we want. So we have a negative and a positive perspective on what AI is going to do. And what that allows us is insight into future workforce planning. So we can see that, okay, we need to scale up in these given areas, so then we can strategize on what to bring in. So it's coming down to analyzing the technology in play, seeing how we're going to incorporate it, and then how it's going to affect our workforce in the future.
Yeah.
Jimmy?
I have a love-hate relationship with AI. I'm a nerd. I love AI. I love movies like Terminator and stuff like that growing up. So, I see the benefits of its application and doing a lot of administrative tasks or things that we get lazy to do. But I think we have to be realistic with understanding that it will replace certain jobs. Doesn't mean it's going to replace you. You just have to mold with what is happening in the market. And it's still too early to really say what's going to necessarily happen. I mean, we're a few years away from developing AGI. Having more of humanistic AI, so we still don't know what's going to happen with that. I like to implement it for, a lot of mundane tasks that can make it, that can get us to a target a lot quicker. But if we were to look at what was going to happen with AI maybe 10 years ago, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's going to be, all these robots doing all these jobs. In the blue collar market, it's actually the opposite. The first people that are going to be replaced are like developers. And I give you an example of this is we had a very well-known coding challenge where I came from. It was like top 0.1% difficulty to do this. And when GPT-4 came out, like, hey, GPT-4, here are the parameters, program it in Elixir, and it did it in 4 minutes, where a staff developer would take about 2 hours, right? So it's like, it's insane what AI can do. I think there's a lot of positives to it, but I understand people's fear and uncertainty with what's going to happen. I say roll with it and understand how to use it to your advantage and be that person that's like half AI, half practitioner almost in like what you're doing. So sorry to take it a bit of a dark turn, but I think it's something we all need to talk about, and a lot of people have a fear of talking about it, especially in our practice area. But I'll say one thing just to kind of close that comment off is any profession that is still dealing with people in one way or another, there'll be a need for it long term. Now, getting to those solutions through like data and coding and so on and so forth will change, but everybody here should still be around.
It's enhancing the role. I don't see it as us going away. It's definitely an augmentation to the role, and that's
Agreed.
kind of how we view it right now.
Okay, just before opening up to questions, if you have no restraints, you have whatever you want to hire, what would it be in that ideal multifunctional HR and PA team?
The unicorn?
That unicorn. One, only one. You settle for one. He can do everything, he or she.
I would look for an open data scientist.
Open?
Yes, someone who can communicate information.
Okay. A storyteller.
Yeah, you have to be a storyteller, and that's part of what it is. We have to look at people analytics and insights as a sales position. We're selling information, we're selling data, and it's been used a number of times during the past couple of days, trust, right? So you're selling trust. Here's my product, here's what I've done, here's what can it do for you. So you're selling it. You're finding the right visualization. You're selling to the CFO. You're selling to all the leaders, and this is the product that we can do. Finding a data scientist that can convey that in an open and friendly manner, then that's
not just delivering numbers and
not just delivering
crunching
numbers.
the data.
Numbers, I mean, I've stuck in years of just looking at spreadsheets, and that's why I wear glasses. It's just horrible just looking and looking and looking. But if you can convey that visually in a pretty picture, this is what we're doing, this is, so what, now what, right? So if they can convey that.
What's in it for them?
It's exactly
the
right,
audience.
exactly
Okay.
right.
I agree with almost everything you say, but one thing I would say is I like finding talent in unique places. I've always done that. And if I give you an example of someone that I actually did pluck, she was like one of the best salespeople I knew. It was a few companies ago. I would have her on my people analytics team because 80% of the battle is selling to the executives and board members of what you're trying to do, why you're trying to get certain money, what you're trying to achieve. And because most of the people in analytics, engineering, again, it's, the stereotype isn't always true, but they're not a salesperson, right? They're not going to have that storytelling ability that you mentioned and saleswomanship to be able to develop that. So me knowing that we have AI to assist us with a lot of these models going forward, a lot of cool products now coming out, going to be a bit less dependent on having a massive team of analysts, and we need very good communicators who have that technical acumen for sure. So I'd pluck someone from one of those areas who have good technical acumen and can work alongside myself and AI.
And get your unicorn. Okay, let's open up for questions, Paul and Jimmy. Yes. We're having the mic here.
Good morning, Michael Ben,
Good morning.
Metrolinx. We've been hearing about these unicorns for years, like hire the unicorn, hire a unicorn.
Look for something like that.
Yesterday we saw there's now about thousands of folks in people analytics. If we say 5% of them are unicorns, we're talking 50, 100.
Yeah,
Let's face it, those have been scooped up by Facebook, Google, Meta. They are the directors, the VPs like yourselves. So for the rest of us that don't have endless budgets, we are not hunting for unicorns. We're really looking for someone that actually exists. I really appreciate your insight about looking for sales, looking for people that communicate. So if I flip your question, and that is you don't have endless budget, you don't have endless opportunities, you have very much hard limitations. For a number of us, smaller teams, 2 to 5, what would those roles be?
Great question.
Profiles.
Very
Sorry,
good
not
question.
roles, profiles.
I'll kick it off. Excellent question. That's a scenario that 95% of companies will experience. And the thing with unicorns is it's a mythical creature. It doesn't exist. Right? I'm not a unicorn. I don't think there's a lot of unicorns. You need to be developed into one. I strongly believe that. So if I'd say one thing before even hiring someone, and you heard my sentiment on, hey, pluck from sales, pluck from these areas, people who can satisfy a particular role and then grow into it, you can do that, but you have to have a very good development program, like employee development program within the organization to make sure that you're coaching and teaching everybody to get to a specific level. And you have to analyze competency gaps amongst your workforce, right? Or your team in particular. If everybody's very heavily skewed towards presenting, right, and being great communicators, it's like, oh, we have a big gap. We don't know how to actually do any of this work. Then you need someone that I'd maybe even pluck from IT. I've done one of my best managers, actually senior managers who ended up being a senior manager, was in IT, plucked them, became an HR project manager, and then kind of went back in people analytics. So I think you have to use the talent that's already available to you, if you can, and then have a very good development program. There isn't going to be one magic person that's going to do it all. Align it to the business. Where does the business need to go? Let's take a look at what competencies will satisfy certain things that we need to execute on that will get us to X mission. So that's my thought.
Think about your strategic goal, right? Where are you now? Where do you need to be in 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road? Again, as I had mentioned earlier, starting off with some of the more technical needs, and then how do you grow that over time? So you're right, talent development is going to be a huge prospect for your organization to say, I need them to be here in 2 years. I need them to be here in 3 years. I need them to be able to convey and communicate at senior leadership. Soft skills in a technical space is not an easy thing to do. People have been rewarded and progressed through very technical competencies, but they haven't necessarily gone down the softer skills of being able to speak to people.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much. We're out of time, but please come and ask them questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jimmy and
everyone.
Paul.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time.
That was great.